My sister looked me straight in the eye and said, "You're nothing but a burden, Claire." Her words sliced deeper than the whispers echoing around the wedding hall. I had sacrificed everything for her, my education, my dreams, even my first love, and now, on the eve of her perfect day, she chose to humiliate me in front of everyone. As laughter rippled through the crowd, I wanted to disappear. But then, something inside me cracked. What if this wasn't just humiliation? What if this betrayal was the spark that would set everything ablaze? My sister's words haunted me long after the guests drifted away from the rehearsal dinner. "You're nothing but a burden, Claire." It wasn't the first time she said it, but that night, with her glittering ring flashing under the lights and her perfect smile plastered for the crowd, it cut deeper than ever before. I walked out of the venue into the cold night air, the echo of laughter still clinging to my skin like poison. I had spent most of my life learning to swallow pain. My father died when I was 12, and overnight the weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders. My mother remarried quickly to a man who adored Lily but regarded me as an inconvenience. I became the quiet backbone of our fractured family, the one who cooked, cleaned, worked part-time jobs, and made sure the bills were paid. No one thanked me. No one noticed. It was simply expected of me. At 18, I had been offered a scholarship to a university I dreamed of attending, but I gave it up. Lily needed tuition for her private school, and my stepfather insisted that a girl like Claire doesn't need higher education. She'll be fine with office work. So I tucked my acceptance letter into a drawer and went to work full-time, promising myself it was temporary. It wasn't. My life became a cycle of giving, paying rent when my mother fell behind, taking late shifts at the diner to cover Lily's dance classes, buying groceries when the fridge was empty. When Lily wanted a new dress for prom, I worked double shifts. When she needed money for her college application fees, I gave up the small savings I had started to build for myself. And then there was Ethan. He was my first love, gentle, thoughtful, and struggling just like I was. We had dreamed of building something together, but when my family's needs grew heavier, I pushed him away. I told myself it was for his own good, that he deserved someone unburdened. The truth was, I was terrified of being selfish. Letting him go was my final sacrifice, and it left a hollow ache in me that never healed. Years passed, and Lily flourished. She was beautiful, ambitious, and bold. People gravitated to her, praised her, adored her. While I clocked in at my office job and came home to a modest apartment with my daughter Emily, Lily stepped into a world of glittering parties and endless admirers. She learned quickly that her looks and charm could buy her everything she wanted. When she met David Miller, a man whose family name opened doors before he even walked through them, it was as though she had won the lottery. He was handsome, wealthy, and eager to show off his perfect fiancée. I watched from the sidelines, always the shadow, the reminder of where she came from. At first, she still called me, asked me for advice, borrowed money, but as the wedding drew closer, her tone shifted. Suddenly, my plain clothes embarrassed her. My simple life became something she mocked. She reminded me constantly that she was the future Mrs. Miller, while I was just Claire, the sister who had never amounted to anything. Then came the picture. The night before the wedding, while I sat alone scrolling through my phone, her post lit up my screen. There she was, Lily, lying on a bed with David, her soon-to-be husband, and my heart stopped. His arm draped over her, his lips close to hers, the caption smug. The past never really leaves us, does it? It wasn't an accident. It wasn't carelessness. It was staged. The angle, the lighting, the smirk on Lily's face. It was designed to wound, to remind me that not only had she taken every opportunity I gave her, but now she would flaunt what I had lost, mocking the pieces of my past I thought were buried. The comments were brutal. People whispered about the mysterious ex she mentioned in interviews, and I knew they were talking about me. My name wasn't there, but it didn't need to be. Lily had crafted the story carefully. The beautiful bride who rose from a broken home, the glamorous woman who left behind her sister's shadows. And now, on the eve of her wedding, she wanted the world to laugh at me. I sat in the dark of my apartment, Emily asleep in the next room, and I felt every cut of betrayal sharper than the last. For years, I had told myself that sacrifice was love, that silence was strength, that one day it would all matter. But staring at that picture, I realized the truth. In their eyes, I had never been more than a servant, a stepping stone, a ghost. Yet something shifted inside me that night. The tears burned hot, but behind them was something colder, sharper. I had lived my life in the shadows, but shadows could swallow light when they grew long enough, and mine had been growing for years. Little did I know the man I once let go, the man I thought was gone forever, was already on his way back into my life. Not as a memory, not as a quiet regret, but as a storm. The wedding invitation arrived in a cream-colored envelope, thick and heavy as though its weight alone carried prestige. When I opened it, my eyes scanned the elegant cursive until they landed on the glaring omission. Emily's name was not there. My daughter, 6 years old, bright-eyed, and the only innocent piece of my life that mattered, wasn't invited. At first, I thought it must have been a mistake. I called my mother, hoping she would reassure me. Instead, her voice was sharp. "Claire, it's a formal event. Children don't belong at something this important." "But she's family," I whispered. "She'll understand when she's older," she replied curtly, as if explaining it to a stubborn child. Later that evening, I confronted Lily. She laughed, brushing it off as if it were trivial. "It's an elegant wedding, Claire, not a playground. You'll thank me later when you don't have to chase your little girl around in front of everyone." Her words stung. Emily had been nothing but pure joy to me, and to hear her dismissed so casually broke something inside. But the more I pushed back, the more united my family became against me. My stepfather accused me of being selfish. My mother sighed about how I always make everything about yourself. It was 3 against 1, and I folded like I always had. I told myself to stay quiet, to let it pass, that enduring humiliation was easier than confrontation. But a voice in the back of my mind whispered, how much longer could I keep living like this? When the day of the wedding arrived, the venue sparkled like a dream. Chandeliers glittered overhead, roses lined every table, and champagne flowed like water. Guests dressed in gowns and tuxedos moved with polished ease, their conversations a chorus of wealth and privilege. I entered quietly, clutching my invitation, my dress simple compared to the extravagance surrounding me. The usher glanced at my card and pointed me toward a table at the very back, tucked near the restrooms. My cheeks burned as I threaded my way through the glittering crowd, past tables adorned with towering centerpieces, past guests who stared with thinly veiled pity. When I finally sat down, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and stale perfume. It was clear. I wasn't meant to be part of the celebration. I was meant to be hidden. Whispers reached me even there. "That's the sister, isn't it? She looks so plain." No wonder Lily never talks about her. Their voices were knives, cutting deeper than I cared to admit. I forced myself to sit straight, to sip from the champagne flute I didn't want, to pretend I didn't hear. But every glance, every whisper pressed heavier on my chest. Then Lily stood, raising her glass. She glowed in her gown, her beauty undeniable, her confidence absolute. "To family," she began, her voice carrying through the hall. "To those who lifted me up, who believed in me, who never held me back. Not everyone has that kind of support, of course." Her eyes flicked to me, just for a second, enough for the guests to follow. A wave of laughter rippled across the room. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest. She had turned me into the punchline of her triumph. Before I could recover, David added his voice. Standing tall beside her, he smiled coldly. "Some people," he said, his tone dripping with disdain, "just don't belong in our world." The laughter grew louder, crueler, bouncing off the marble walls. My face burned. My throat ached, but I refused to cry. Emily's face flashed in my mind, her little smile, her trust. I clenched my fists beneath the tablecloth, nails digging into my palms, holding myself together through sheer force of will. Humiliation burned hotter than fire, but beneath it, something else stirred, a flicker of anger, of resolve. For years I had endured, silenced myself, carried burdens that weren't mine. But tonight, with their voices tearing me apart in front of strangers, I felt something shift. And just when the humiliation reached its peak, an unexpected shadow entered the room. The laughter still rang in my ears as I sat frozen at the farthest corner of the wedding hall, my chair pressed so close to the restroom door that guests brushed past me with muttered apologies. My hands trembled in my lap, the wine glass untouched, my face burning from the cruel spotlight my sister had thrown on me. Lily's toast had been a dagger, her voice syrupy sweet as she thanked everyone who had lifted her up, unlike those who had only dragged her down. The room erupted in polite laughter, and all eyes turned to me. I wanted to vanish. I wanted the floor to split open and swallow me whole. Instead, I sat still, trying to keep the tears from falling. Then, as if the air itself shifted, the room went quiet. A voice broke the silence. "Excuse me," it said, steady and firm. Every head turned. My breath caught in my throat. Walking through the grand doors, dressed in a dark suit that carried power in every line, was Ethan Carter. My Ethan. The boy I once loved, the man I had left behind to carry the weight of my family. But he was no boy now. His presence filled the room like a storm rolling over calm waters. He strode toward me with unwavering confidence. Before I could react, he reached out, took my trembling hand, and pulled me gently to my feet. His eyes found mine, eyes I thought I'd never see again, and then he turned to the crowd. "This," he announced, his voice echoing against the marble walls, "is my partner." The word cracked like thunder. The whispers that had once mocked me now vanished into stunned silence. Forks clattered against plates, glasses stilled in midair. For a moment, no one breathed. I felt my knees weaken. My partner? My heart raced, confusion colliding with relief. Ethan's grip tightened just slightly, grounding me, telling me not to pull away. The humiliation that had suffocated me only seconds ago shifted into something else entirely. Confusion, disbelief, and the faintest flicker of hope. Across the hall, Lily's face drained of color. David's smirk faltered, his hand clenching around his champagne glass. My mother and stepfather exchanged looks, suddenly uncertain. The same guests who had laughed at me moments before now shifted uncomfortably in their seats, whispering in tones too low for me to catch. Ethan didn't stop there. He guided me toward the center of the room, his hand steady at my back, his expression unreadable. Then he faced David's father, a man who sat at the head table radiating wealth and arrogance. "Mr. Miller," Ethan said smoothly, "I was looking forward to discussing our next round of contracts, but I wasn't expecting to see my partner treated this way." The silence deepened, so thick it felt like glass ready to shatter. Gasps echoed. I turned to him, wide-eyed, barely able to comprehend what I was hearing. Partner? Contracts? Ethan wasn't just a guest. He was someone who held power over the very family that had just destroyed me. David's father stiffened in his seat, his polished smile faltering. "Mr. Carter," he stammered, we had no idea." "That's the problem," Ethan cut in, his tone calm but sharp. "People make assumptions, dangerous ones." The shift was instantaneous. The same guests who had laughed now leaned forward, their eyes darting between Ethan and me, trying to piece together the new dynamic. Murmurs replaced mockery. Heads nodded in my direction with sudden, forced respect. The humiliation that had consumed me began to evaporate, replaced by something I had never felt in that room before. Dignity. Lily stood, her voice trembling as she forced out a laugh. "Ethan, what a surprise. I didn't know you and my sister were close." Ethan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "There are many things you don't know, Lily." The tension was palpable. David's jaw clenched, his eyes darting between me and Ethan, as though the ground beneath him had begun to crumble. The spotlight that Lily had so carefully turned on me now burned her instead. I should have felt triumphant. But beneath the relief was a gnawing unease. Ethan's timing was too perfect, his words too deliberate. He hadn't just stumbled in to save me. He had planned this. And yet, as he guided me toward the exit, his hand never leaving mine, the crowd parting before us like water before a ship, I couldn't bring myself to resist. The humiliation had turned to silence, the silence to awe. For the first time that night, I stood tall. Still, as the doors closed behind us, I couldn't silence the question echoing in my mind. Was Ethan here to save me, or to use me? The night air outside the wedding hall was heavy, scented with roses and champagne. Ethan led me toward a waiting car, his hand never leaving mine. My heart raced, not from the humiliation anymore, but from the sharp confusion swirling around him. I had questions pressing against my lips, but his silence was commanding, almost daring me to ask. When the door shut behind us, the city lights blurred by, and finally, he spoke. "You deserve better than what they gave you tonight." His tone was steady, but there was something underneath it, something darker. I studied his face, so different from the boy I remembered. Ethan had once been the dreamer with calloused hands and a worn-out jacket, the boy who promised me stars even when he had none to give. But this man? His suit whispered wealth, his watch gleamed power, and his eyes carried a weight that felt like secrets. "How are you even here?" I whispered. How did you become this?" His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the boy he used to be. "After you left me, I decided I'd never be weak again. Your family laughed at me, Claire. They said I was worthless, that I would never make something of myself. They weren't wrong at the time, but I swore I'd prove them wrong. I built everything with that fire." A memory surged. Ethan at my mother's dinner table, my stepfather sneering at his cheap shoes, Lily giggling behind her hand. I had defended him, the only one who ever did, but in the end I had let him go. For duty, for family. Now here he was, not only having proven himself, but standing taller than all of them combined. "I came back," he continued, his voice softening, "because of you. You were the only one who believed in me when I had nothing, and I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd repay you. Tonight was that chance." Relief washed over me, but it lasted only seconds before his next words chilled me. "That picture Lily posted," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. "It wasn't an accident." I stiffened. "What do you mean?" I made sure it got out. His confession was quiet, almost casual, but it thundered in my ears. "I knew she'd try something cruel. I just nudged it along. I wanted the world to see the truth of her and David before the vows even left their lips." The room seemed to tilt. You orchestrated this?" His gaze didn't waver. "I didn't make her betray you, Claire. I just made sure her betrayal burned brighter than she ever intended." My breath caught. For years I had prayed for justice, dreamed of someone finally seeing what I endured. But now, justice had come wrapped in manipulation, and it terrified me. I turned to the window, my reflection pale against the glass. Was Ethan really saving me, or was I just another pawn in a game he had started years ago? Meanwhile, inside the Miller mansion, panic was spreading like wildfire. I heard later that David's family had scrambled to cover the scandal, calling in favors from lawyers, publicists, anyone who could scrub the internet of the damning photo. But the damage was already done. Screenshots circulated like wildfire, whispers growing into rumors, rumors into truths. Desperate to regain control, David's family turned their gaze on me. They dug into my past, hiring investigators, hoping to paint me as unworthy, a distraction, an excuse for their humiliation. What they found instead was a history of sacrifice, unpaid debts I had cleared, bills I had covered, opportunities I had surrendered so Lily could shine. The narrative shifted. Suddenly, whispers about Lily weren't about her beauty or charm, but about the sister she had trampled to climb higher. Every success of hers was traced back to me, every accolade bought with my sacrifices. Lily called me that night. Again and again. My phone lit up with her name until I had to silence it. I couldn't bring myself to answer. What could she possibly say? Sorry for weaponizing your love? Sorry for stealing everything and then spitting on your name? I lay awake with Emily curled against me, her tiny breaths steady, grounding me. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of what I had lost, not just opportunities or love, but the sense that family meant safety. I had given everything, and in return, I had been fed to the wolves. Ethan's words replayed in my mind. He claimed he was here to save me, but as the city slept, I realized salvation that comes from manipulation may not be salvation at all. For the first time, I wondered, was I truly the player in this game, or just another piece on Ethan's chessboard? The fallout came faster than anyone expected. Within days of the wedding, Ethan formally withdrew his company's contracts with the Miller family. It was a surgical strike, clean, calculated, and devastating. David's father had built his empire on appearances, on the illusion of untouchable wealth, and without Ethan's backing, cracks spread through the facade like lightning across glass. Investors panicked. Stock prices plummeted. Business partners who once bragged about their connection to the Millers suddenly stopped returning calls. Newspapers described it as the swift unraveling of a dynasty, and I watched the headlines from the quiet of my apartment. Emily's laughter echoing from her bedroom while the world outside burned. Inside the Miller mansion, chaos reigned. David turned his fury on Lily, blaming her for everything. "If you hadn't posted that picture," he shouted, his voice caught on a paparazzi's hidden microphone, "we wouldn't be in this mess." The recording went viral within hours, his rage fueling the fire Ethan had already set. But Ethan wasn't finished. He leaked the original photograph to the press, ensuring that no amount of spin or damage control could erase it. The image of Lily in bed with David before their wedding day spread like wildfire, stamped across tabloids, dissected on talk shows, and turned into memes that stripped her of any dignity she had left. Overnight, Lily went from socialite to spectacle, her name a punchline. I should have felt vindicated, and part of me did. But another part, the part still carrying years of silent sacrifice, watched uneasily as Ethan's vengeance consumed them. Was this truly justice, or was it just another spectacle? As David's empire crumbled, so did his marriage. Less than a month after the wedding, divorce papers were filed. Lily's once pristine Instagram, filled with curated perfection, became a graveyard of cruel comments and mocking emojis. She disappeared from public view, but whispers followed her everywhere. Meanwhile, my own family fractured under the weight of the scandal. My mother and stepfather, who had once worshipped Lily, began to distance themselves. Some relatives, long silent about the way I had been treated, finally admitted what they had known all along, that without me, Lily would never have had her opportunities. A few quietly reached out, offering me sympathy. Awkward apologies wrapped in half-hearted words. Others simply abandoned Lily, too afraid to be dragged down with her. It was strange to watch the balance shift. For so long, I had been the forgotten sister, the shadow. Now, the spotlight burned on Lily, exposing every selfish act, every betrayal. People began to see me differently, not as the failure Lily painted me to be, but as the sister who had given everything and asked for nothing. Then, one evening, as Emily and I sat on the couch watching cartoons, my phone buzzed. It was Lily. I hesitated, staring at her name, my chest tightening. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was broken, shaky. "Claire, please, you have to help me. Everyone's left me. David hates me. Mom won't even look at me, and I don't have anyone else." I closed my eyes, memories rushing back. The dresses I bought her, the nights I stayed up working so she could sleep, the dreams I buried so she could chase hers. And now, here she was, begging. "I can't. I whispered. There was silence on the other end, followed by a sob. You're my sister. I swallowed hard. I was, but you made sure I'd never be again. I ended the call, my hand trembling, tears burning my eyes. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even hatred. It was emptiness, the final thread between us cut. Later that night, I carried Emily to bed. She clung to me sleepily, her small hand gripping my shirt. I kissed her forehead and watched her chest rise and fall with each gentle breath. For the first time in weeks, peace settled over me. It was fragile, fleeting, but real. And yet, even in that quiet moment, a chill lingered. Because peace never lasts, not when secrets are still buried. The weeks that followed felt like stepping into a new world. For the first time in my life, I was no longer defined by what I had given up. I wasn't the shadow behind Lily's shine, or the quiet daughter my mother leaned on while pretending I didn't exist. I was simply Claire, and that was enough. I began small. I stopped answering calls from relatives who only reached out when they needed something. I drew boundaries with my mother, who tried to reconcile by saying, "We all made mistakes." For years, I would have swallowed that apology and carried her burdens again. This time, I told her calmly, "I'm done being the mistake you build your excuses on." Her stunned silence was its own liberation. Work shifted too. I had always been reliable, the one who never said no, the one who took every extra shift. But now, I started saying no when it cost me evenings with Emily. I asked for projects I wanted, and I took pride in excelling at them, not to prove anyone wrong, but to finally prove to myself that I could. Ethan was there, hovering on the edge of my transformation. He would call, sometimes stop by, offering dinners, long walks, moments of quiet conversation. He never pushed, but I could see it in his eyes, that unspoken hope that we might rebuild what we once had. One evening, after Emily was asleep, he took me to the rooftop of his downtown office building. The city spread out beneath us, glittering like a galaxy. He handed me a small velvet box, his expression unreadable. "I've waited years for this," he said softly. "Claire, will you marry me?" My breath caught. For a moment, the girl I once was, the girl who dreamed of forever with him, rose to the surface. I imagined saying yes, imagined Emily gaining the father she deserved, imagined the life I never thought I could have. But then I remembered the years of sacrifice, the years when I had no choice, when every decision I made was for someone else. I remembered how easily I had abandoned myself, and I knew that this moment, more than any other, was not about Ethan. It was about me. I closed the box gently and placed it back in his hands. "Ethan," I whispered, "I care for you, but I won't say yes because I feel I owe you, or because the world expects me to. If I choose you, it will be when I am ready. This time, I have to choose for me." For a long moment, silence hung between us. Then, slowly, he nodded. "That's the Claire I knew you could become." It wasn't rejection, it was freedom. For once, my life was mine to decide, and no betrayal could take that away again. While I rebuilt, Lily and David unraveled. Their marriage disintegrated into public spats and courtroom drama. The press, once enchanted by their glamour, now feasted on their downfall. "From fairy tale to fiasco," one headline read, splashed across a magazine cover featuring Lily in tears. David moved through women and parties, trying to salvage his pride, while Lily faded into obscurity, abandoned by the very friends who once clung to her. I didn't rejoice in their ruin. There was no triumph in watching someone drown, even when they had once pushed me underwater. But I didn't grieve either. Their fate was the consequence of choices made in arrogance and cruelty. Meanwhile, I found strength in building something of my own. With savings I had quietly tucked away and support from a few colleagues who believed in me, I opened a small consulting firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Emily would sit at the desk beside me, drawing while I worked, and I would look at her and know that every late night, every sacrifice was now for a future I chose, not one forced on me. Clients began to come, slowly at first, then steadily. Word spread about my honesty, my diligence. For the first time, people weren't seeing me as Lily's sister, or the girl who lived in someone else's shadow. They saw me as Claire Morgan, a woman who had endured and who had risen. Ethan continued to thrive in his world of boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, but our paths, though still intertwined, no longer defined each other. He respected the boundaries I set, and I respected the patience he showed. Perhaps one day our stories would merge again, but if they didn't, I was no longer afraid. Sometimes at night, I thought of Lily. I wondered if she regretted, if she lay awake wishing she had chosen differently. But then I would tuck Emily into bed, close the door, and remind myself that her choices were hers, just as mine were finally mine. Justice hadn't come through screaming or vengeance. It had come quietly, in the form of freedom, in the life I built without them. The sweetest revenge is not destroying your enemies, it's living without them.